Hi guys, Happy New Year. This is Takatoshi Shibayama, the host of the Future Design Podcast. It's a brand new year, and while the pandemic is still amongst us, I hope that everybody will still have a joyous year with new experiences and a refined version of yourself. And for all the viewers from last year, thank you for all the support, and I hope that I can continue to empower you with thought-provoking material in 2021. So I want to kick off this year on a topic of social media and how we can improve our experiences as content creators and viewers. And as you know, social media has become a tool for spreading fake news and propaganda. So I spoke with Jenna Pilgrim, CEO of Streambed, on what is a way to create a better social media. What is missing is a reputation behind the content creators. If we know the reputation behind who's writing or publishing the content, wouldn't it alleviate the problem? And if there's a certain value exchange in doing so, wouldn't it incentivize for quality content? And also, Jenna talks about putting a blockchain infrastructure underneath it. She's been inside the circles of the greats of blockchain, so I know she's coming with a wealth of knowledge, ideas, and understanding. And she's also building a product with sincerity that I felt throughout the episode. So stick around to the end. Thank you, Jenna Pilgrim, for being on our show. Social media content is something that it's really on the spotlight right now. I think social media is like being demonized. We see Mark Zuckerberg and Dorsey and all these guys in front of Congress being grilled at. But this is something that we'll dive into later. And even social media and blockchain is not something that we really hear together. So that's another thing that I want to dive into. But before we really kick this off, I just really want to say thank you for being on our show.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'm really excited for our conversation.
Awesome. So let's start out with this. So who is Jenna Pilgrim, who's not the CEO of Streambed?
It's took me a while to unwind myself from who is Jenna Pilgrim when she's not the CEO of Streambed. So I'm Jenna Pilgrim. I am a blockchain person. I am a blockchain career native. So a lot of people in the commercial blockchain world did other things before blockchain became very popular. I didn't. I'm a 26-year-old founder, and I got started in the blockchain space when I was 20. And I am, in my spare time, I'm a rower, I'm a cyclist, I play some golf, but I'm working on many different things at the same time. So when I'm not working on Streambed things, I pride myself on being a hyper connector. So I connect my friends to my other friends, or I get my friends jobs at my friends' companies, or connect people to advocacy groups, or people to board members, or whatever. All of that is, I really believe in that, the long tail of connecting people together. So whatever I do, I want to connect people.
That's interesting, because when I was in the finance industry, it was all about me, and we don't really share ideas, or we're just spinning ideas so that people will buy into our ideas so that we could profit off of it. But when I came into this blockchain industry, there were so many people saying, oh, I'll connect you with this person and you should collaborate. And I never heard so much the word collaborate in my life since I got into this industry, which is awesome. And you're probably definitely one of them too, because it's so refreshing to me, especially at that point when I started off, that, there's so many people who are willing to, collaborate, work together and grow this industry, because it is a nascent industry, right?
Yeah. And I think that idea of collectivism and collaboration is something that's really inherent to I guess, the concept of decentralization. And you get into things like, Bitcoin is owned by now, hundreds of millions of people. And if that's a real thing, then we're all working together to keep that network up and to keep the network moving and to keep transactions moving. So if we start there and then move into all of these different blockchains, they only work if we work together. And no matter what different methods we have, we all agree that blockchain and decentralization is going to be better for the world in the long run. There are going to be, I use this metaphor of a boulder being pushed up a hill. So everyone in the blockchain space agrees that the boulder needs to get to the top of the hill. They may have different methods as to how to roll it. They may chip off a piece. You talk about your like traders and your financial people who want to just move money around and then do nothing with it. They want to chip off a piece of the boulder. They want to find, people want to use different methods. They want to work together across different people. They want to, build a ring around the whole mountain to push the boulder up to the top, or they want to tear the mountain down or whatever. But they all agree that the boulder needs to get to the top of the hill. And that collectivism is something that really drew me to the blockchain ecosystem. And that's what kept me here. And I don't think I could ever get a real job ever again.
Yeah. After being in this, it's really hard to get outside anyway.
It's very culty when you get into the...
Totally. And then from the outsiders, everybody thinks you're just like a complete freak.
Yes, yeah, you're just a whole big group of wackos who like all buy into each other's drink each other's Kool-Aid, and then everyone's just drink. But we've all got to come out sometime. So I'd like to think that there are a couple of good applications that are actually making it into the mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, when I talk to my ex hedge fund buddies, they always still ask me, I was like, are you still doing that Bitcoin thingy?
That Bitcoin thing is going to get, I wish I had a teacher that said that Bitcoin thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but how did you really get into blockchain? Because, well, just for the listeners, you were a communication director or something for the blockchain revolution, right? That was one of the first books I actually read about blockchain. And
really?
And I still had it in my Kindle, and I read it from time to time because it gives me a lot of inspiration to think about like new ideas. And when I read that you actually were working for the Tapscott group and you were a part of that, it really kind of it really excited me a lot. But there must have been something that really got you into it, because for me, and probably listeners they've been hearing it over and over again, but like I always thought Bitcoin was something that can be some part of the financial inclusion. There's a lot of people who can't save in their own currency for many reasons, monetary policy is failing them, or it's just that they don't, there's so much inflation happening, or they want to get money across borders and they only have Western Union. They'll take like 10% off your transaction fees. I mean, there's 10%
if you're lucky.
Exactly. And so there was so much promise in this, and now it kind of evolved into this kind of industry, right? Because it was before just Bitcoin, and it became, and you probably saw the whole transition there. So can you just
seeing the emergence of different blockchains over the last 4 or 5 years has been crazy, just to see how many different ones that get traction and which ones do and which ones don't, and going through the whole ICO boom and then down again, and now we're into the DeFi boom, and then eventually probably that will go down again, or it won't. Like we don't know. So to answer your question, how I got in is I was going to school. I was in my 4th year of my finance degree at a liberal arts university in Canada, which actually happens to be in my hometown, which I now live in. I moved back to my hometown last year and was able to now, hire new grads here and build the business here and build a company here, because now it all of a sudden doesn't matter where you build a company anymore. So I was able to move my life back here, which was really great.
Yeah. Workforce is decentralized.
Yeah, exactly. I get to be happy and be here and be with my family. That part has been really great. But how I got in is I was in school, and the chancellor of my university gave a speech and talked about this new decentralized network of networks that people could use to move money around. And the chancellor of the university was Don Tapscott. And I was like, I have to meet this guy. Like, I have some Bitcoin. I got it for a very dumb reason quite a long time ago that we won't get into. This weird secret gamer money at the time is what I thought. I thought it was fake. And I was like, I know what Bitcoin is. I have to talk to this guy. And so I stalked him, and then I asked him for a job and knew enough about what they were working on that they took a chance on me. And then from there, the rest is history, I guess. We did a 11 city book tour for Blockchain Revolution in 10 cities I had never been to. And that was crazy. I ditched my last semester of school to start working for them. My parents were not pleased, but that's okay. We still graduated on time. Everything is fine when your boss is the chancellor. And so that part was good. Okay. Yeah. I had a letter. It was fine. And so I still graduated on time. And then that the Blockchain Revolution was a good book, but it created more questions than answers. And so at that point, Don and Alex Tapscott, the authors of Blockchain Revolution, they founded the Blockchain Research Institute, which was really a springboard into all of the other applications of blockchain in all of these different sectors. So they undertook 70 different research projects across like 10 verticals and 7 horizontals, to look into what blockchain would mean for all of these different industries. So obviously financial services was the biggest, and then it got into government, and then it got into even things like democracy, it got into media and entertainment, and into climate change, and all kinds of things. It was a think tank. And that's how I met my co-founder, Michael Casey, was one of the researchers at the Blockchain Research Institute. He was researching tokenization. And we sort of hit it off, and I ended up now almost, it would now be 3 years ago, almost to the day, because yesterday would have been 3 years ago, almost to the day, that Michael and I became close friends in a riverboat in Bonn, Germany, alongside the COP23 Climate Change Summit.
Okay.
We were both judges at a hackathon, like a blockchain hack for climate. And we couldn't interact with any of the groups because we were judges. So we just hung out for 3 days and like philosophized about what decentralized technology would mean for the world and how it could be seen as a force of good. And that was kind of the springboard into what eventually became Streambed.
So that's why I wanted to ask you. It's not about the how, but it's more about the why. So, you and Michael Casey spoke about decentralization and why it really means to you. That's kind of what I wanted to get out, is like, why does decentralization or this whole blockchain thing really mean so much to you that you had to drop out of school, why you had to start a new business, and embark on this journey?
I think at first it was because I needed a job, and when a job knocks down your door, then that's the goal of going to school. A goal of a higher education is to set you up for a job. So if you have a job, then that's great. So at first it was a job, and then once I met all of the crazy cast of characters of all of the different blockchain Bitcoin people, and those now the people that I met back then are now the figureheads that we hear talking about things. There's I'm not a name drop person, so I'm not going to do that, but it's that cast of characters who then went on to build all kinds of really cool things that I was like, they're moving from here to here, and now I must move from there to here as well. And so that's what really, their vision into what a decentralized future could look like, no matter how wacky it may seem. I drank the Kool-Aid, and we just keep going, I guess. Now I help other people drink the Kool-Aid, I guess.
Getting more people into the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or trying to find a way to bring the industry to everyone else. That's more so what Streambed is trying to do.
Right. And through your experiences with Dan Tapscott and all the kind of very profound people that are actually in the industry, what are the things that you actually learned from them? What was something that really inspired you to keep going, maybe even find Streambed?
I think one of them is that it's never really the end, but everything will come through if you continue at it. Persistence is everything. Like Streambed has gone through, we've been around for 2.5 years now. We've gone through eons of different phases, a whole bunch of different business models, like that fail fast mentality, or that, keep on the same thing and eventually you will succeed, or keep trying different things to get to where you're trying to go. That's one thing. That sort of relentless persistence is one. The other one I would say is that you never lose by helping other people, ever. It may just elongate your timeline, but I mean, between you and I would rather build with a bigger foundation than try to run very, very fast in one direction by myself. And being able to help out other people in the industry, being able to make introductions when you don't need to, being able to just extend that olive branch, that will never end badly. It may just take a little bit longer, but you have to be okay with that. And that persistence helps you push you through that.
I like that. And it's probably fits in with your sports analogy as well, right? Because you do rowing, you do cycling. I mean, it is a team sport, and you can't, obviously you could do it by yourself, but you know, the things that you actually do with cycling, you're doing with, you know, other teammates. You're at the front or you're at the back, or, you know, rowing, you know, it's a team sport. I mean, I'm sure that fits in well with your, you know, sportsman mentality.
Yeah, definitely. I rowed crew for 3 years through university, and that was the most formative activity of both my undergrad, of my, you know, sort of younger years, definitely, because rowing and cycling and any of these sort of endurance driven team sports, they teach you the value of and the importance of non-optional behavior. So if I don't show up, my teammates will be mad, or if I don't show up, you know, my teammates can't succeed either. In rowing, you can't, if there, you know, there are 9 people in a boat, and if all 9 people don't show up, or if one of the 9 people doesn't show up, then you can't row at all. It's a little bit different for cycling, because obviously you have different positions, but you can kind of mold around if there's less people. But if you're all working together at the same time towards the same goal, then that persistence is, you know, you could go forever. You know, I could cycle for 4, 5, 6 hours at a time, but as long as you're with other people, then you get to keep that endurance up. That was the importance of picking the right co-founder. Actually, Michael picked me, but the importance of getting the right people around you. We have a really loyal advisory board and a really loyal founding team. There are 10 of us on the founding, or there are 4 co-founders, but then there are 10 of us kind of who are all equity paid only and are still actively striving towards building what we're trying to build at Streambed when there's no money there, and there's no inside, there's no sort of light at the end of the tunnel that says this is when the money is going to come. This is when, you know, we're all trying to strive for something that I mean, I would never say it may never come, but that it will be a long time before there will be any payoff. And getting the right team members around you who you know are not going to bail is the best blessing that I could have. I could not do it without them. You can't always be at the front of the pyramid.
And is that why you chose the name Streambed, because it had, you know, like connection to your rowing experience?
No, but that does kind of make sense. So a streambed is the bottom of the river. A streambed is where the rich deposits from a river end up. So the bed of a stream exists even if the river dries up. So we are in many different phases of social media, many different phases of analytics, and content gets put out at this breakneck speed, kind of like the river. And what we do is we take all of the information about that content, the important information about who collaborated on stuff, how often people collaborate, how close 2 people are. We talk a lot about relationship strength. So like if I follow someone on Instagram, that's just one connection. But to someone like, you know, my best friend Monica, I am connected to her on email. I'm connected to her on Facebook. I'm connected to her on LinkedIn, and I follow her on Twitter, and I text her and I WhatsApp her, and all of those different platforms are little data points that show how strong the relationship is between 2 people. And if that can then be scaled, then you can actually take that information and go to brands or advertisers and say, how worth it is it to you for this person to broadcast to their network, of which their relationship strength is X, is X%. How worth it is it to you to pay them for that data, or to connect with them in a more meaningful way? Because this whole influencer world of, you know, somebody who has, you know, 100,000 followers on TikTok isn't that much. You know, it's millions and millions of followers on TikTok is even still not that much. Yeah. But that doesn't make sense, because those are all just their own little independent data points. So just because you have 100 million followers, that doesn't mean you get that many reactions or interactions, or that you even know who any of those people are. And so advertisers can't play in that field because they can't validate the data.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you know, I also work in another consumer product industry, and we try to look at influencers and how really influence do they have with their followers. Or a lot of the time they're just there because they're cool or they're hot or whatever, and it doesn't really translate to actual sales. And this whole idea of like, oh, I'm an influencer, I got 10 million followers, doesn't really mean much if there's no real connection. There's no connectivity between the people, and I don't even like the word influence, because it's not influence, right?
Influence, that's okay. As soon as we got to influencer, it got a little bit dicey. We've had people of influence for a long time. We've had, heads of state, we've had celebrities, we've had all of that way before we had the internet. We've had people to point to who are placement in ads or who are in commercials or whatever. We've had all of that before we had the internet. But it's only when the internet came along that regular people could regular people could become authorities on things. But like, who gave a mommy blogger named Nancy down the street authority to talk about what kind of baby food is best for all babies? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I think the whole influencer world, and I may get kicked for saying this because some of our main users are influencers, but the influencer world to me is a blip.
Right. Well, in a way, they always say if you had an experience, you should share it with the world. And I think the internet did give that infrastructure, that pipeline to allow people that it's not just about influence, but who just wants to say something, right? Because before the internet, you had to be some kind of authority. You had to be a celebrity. You had to be a politician. You had to be a successful business person to be on TV to, say something to the world. But now, because of Web 1.0, or you could call it 2.0. I mean, it allowed us to actually go out and even podcasts like what we're doing right now is like, who am I to actually interview Jenna Pilgrims and ask her a bunch of questions?
Yeah, right. It broke down those definitely elite walls, but it also broke down all of our reputation mechanisms. Like, we built, we built a whole world that did have people of influence in it. But if you give everybody a printing press for information, then you have to find a way to, and this might lead into what we can talk about next, content moderation. This may lead into how do you moderate who is correct and who is not, and who should be able to say things and who should not. And that's where things get really dicey. And that's what internet or Web 1 did wrong. Or Web 2. We're in Web 2 now. So that's what Web 2 did wrong.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, you just alluded to it, but yes, I mean, why are unaccountable corporations deciding what word gets out into the world, right? And actually, which is strange, and I'm just taking the US as an example, but they're asking Twitter, they're asking Facebook to moderate all this content because they don't want fake news, they don't want propaganda. But the thing is, if we allow authority to those corporations, and I say this again strongly, without any accountability towards us to decide what content is allowed to go out there. I mean, what does that tell us for our modern, democratic society, right?
Yeah, well, and what kind of power, but also what kind of machine is that installing online? Because you have all of the people who need to then moderate that. There's an awesome New York Times podcast. I listen to The Daily every day, and there's an awesome episode about content moderation. And they went to the Philippines, where there is, giant high rises that are filled with people who all they do is click through the worst parts of the internet all day long. Wow. So not only are we saying that these companies have to moderate it, but then they turn around and pay not living wage to all of these people who then have to, they have to go through and they have to look at the worst of humanity and decide who lives and who gets to stay on the platform and who does not. Right. And subjecting humans to doing that is worse in itself. And so that whole concept of content moderation, just, you have to first define what misinformation is, but then you also have to define how are we going to sift through the absolute mass of content that can be created. So I don't have all the answers, and it's going to be a really interesting couple months.
Yeah, well, it's going to be probably years until we get to the bottom of this, right? I mean,
definitely, yeah. And that's to say nothing of antitrust lawsuits or different companies being forced to split up because they're too powerful, or Apple's hold on the App Store, or Google's hold on search engines, or there's all kinds of different things that will need to be sorted out in the next bit. That those are, antitrust is something we've seen before with, oil and railroads and all the rest of it. But
Microsoft
content moderation is something we have not seen yet.
Yeah, and before it used to be the newspapers thing, but again, that was the kind of same thing too. I mean, they decided what kind of news gets out into the world, right? And then now we
they had some sort of agreed upon filter.
Yeah, exactly. But
now
again,
everyone is a news organization.
Exactly. But at the same time, I mean, why give, your handful of newspapers or media companies the right to judge what goes out into the world, right? So it's always been, I don't think it's a matter of internet, or it's not about TV broadcasting or anything. It's always around since humanity, right? I mean, governments were the first one to decide what they wanted to get out in the world, and now it became the new media company. Now it's the internet.
Well, and then you also have to stop. You have to, like, the government. If the government is controlling the media, then they're deciding that the bad things about them aren't coming out, because everyone still is like selfishly driven to protect themselves.
Yeah,
and that makes sense, but it's tough to sort of orchestrate how to move forward from that.
Yeah, I mean, if you just take the Nazi propaganda, I mean, they control the whole media, and they decided that, all they want to hear is like they're winning and they're killing all the Jews and all that, right? So, I mean, I don't think this is a problem just for media or internet. It's a matter of humanity, right? And how can we be more liberal about how we get our messages across into the world? And of course, I mean, we are human. I mean, we make mistakes, so maybe there isn't misinformation, or we do it as a propaganda. I mean, there's no way we can solve this. I mean, this is like a rabbit hole that we were never going to get out of.
Yeah, exactly. But I think collectively, it's a rabbit hole that we can only get out of together. It's one that we can only get out of by building a reputation system or something like it, working together to correlate enough data points in a public environment that is not controlled by these big social media companies, or that may be still used in portions by those media companies. I'm not saying that, they're Facebook's not, you can't fault Facebook for creating a business model that worked really well. It's still a company. It's still capitalism. They did what society told them to do. And, it told them to do what they could to get to the top.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, the theme of this whole podcast is about, like, how do we get better as humans, right? I mean, how do we improve in humanity? Because, Mark Zuckerberg made that to, like, hang out or, like, rank chicks in the beginning, right? I mean, that's exactly what he did. And it was not intended to become this huge advertising company that can broadcast propaganda or can, connect with other people.
Or can sway elections, or can, be hacked and then be manipulated by foreign governments. Like, it wasn't meant to be that.
No.
So then how do we get back to what it was supposed to be? We probably, in the Edelman Trust Barometer says that in times of crisis, humans revert to their localized tendencies. And we saw, like, COVID was a perfect example of this, where in COVID, we all, like, in lockdown, we all went back home to our, how many people went back to their parents' house and lived there, or how many young people decided, just because, they didn't want to live in their box in the sky in Manhattan, they wanted to go to their parents' country home and wherever, if they were able to do that, or they want to go back to wherever they were from. And I think that growth is actually a healthy one, that we were moving too fast. And the world told us that, no, we need to stop and slow down. And it's painful, definitely painful. We still have record high unemployment. We still have all kinds of jobs that won't come back at all. But I think that the growth will be more painful, but that it will be better in the end, I hope.
Yeah, for sure. I think that people started to understand the interconnectivity of our, each other is probably more important than anything else. And, hopefully, who knows, but, that's what I really wish for. And just going back to the social media part of things. Now you're creating a system where people who create content can continue to track where their content is going, right? Am I explaining that correct? And then where, before, I mean, I guess there are platforms out there like HubSpot and Sprout that I've seen before that does the same thing, but yours is on a blockchain. So could you tell us, like, how it's different from the others?
Sure. So we're similar to like a Hootsuite or a Sprout Social, like you said. We publish to different social media platforms on the user's behalf, but we actually give them the opportunity to tag people in the delegation and to delegate analytics to all the people who may have helped them create that content or who they may want to see how that content performs. So for example, if we're on this podcast, you may have sponsors of the podcast, you may have a distributor, you may have an AV team. All of those people have a stake in the creation of this piece of content, but you as the publisher are the only one who gets to see the analytics of how this video performs. Even I as a contributor don't get to see in real time how this podcast performs because it's your podcast. But we've both made contributions to it. And so that idea of contributing to things online helps us build a better reputation, what we think is going to be a reputation layer for the internet. So that's on the publisher side. Those are for people who create content. For people who create, typically create content about anything, people who just post on social media, they should be able to enable brands to be a part of that conversation. So there's the collaboration conversation between creators. So that's between people, creators and contributors. And then the reason that companies have historically done a bad job at advertising is they haven't spent enough time being able to connect directly with people who already really like their brand. Brands talk about ambassadors all the time. They talk about using influencers, but at the same time, we don't necessarily need to get into top level influencers, and lots of brands can't afford them or just don't want them. They want to connect directly with the people who care passionately about their brand and who listen to things like, our brand is sustainable, or our brand is, our disposable cutlery is compostable, or something like that. Like those added pieces matter to the people who care deeply about a company or care deeply about the environment or care deeply about something, and they pick the brands that they want, and those brands then get rewarded with more business because they're supported by them. So we're aiming to connect contributors to creators, but then we're aiming to try to find a way for brands to play in this relationship without being intrusive. Because advertisers right now just like barrage people with ads, and they hope that works, and it kind of works. But I'm not the only one who just clicks skip ad, and there's ad blockers. There's all kinds of different ways to make it so that you just shut yourself off from that. But I still want to be advertised things that I like. Instagram ads work on me, like sue me. They work. I buy cool clothes on Instagram because I like them, and they advertise the right things to me. But there's no way on Instagram to like tell Instagram that I bought this thing, or here's my content about this thing. Please stop showing me this ad because I already bought 3. Like there's none of that. Yeah. There's no way for there to be a two-way conversation in advertising, and there needs to be one. And if there isn't one, then we're just going to keep being barraged by big companies, and the ones with the most money are going to win. And the ones who are doing the right thing often don't have the most money.
So what do you mean by like the right thing? So let's do it, because let's say I like to share articles, and I think a lot of people do like to do that, right? And they might have like really good intellectual content there. Unfortunately, I never get a lot of likes on those things. I don't think most people care about them, but I think that there's a reputation for people who actually do share like really good content, whether it's from like a news article, it could be from a magazine. I mean, I think there's a value in doing that, and then with that, like let's say I share something from Rolling Stones magazine, let's say, because they do like pretty interesting investigative stuff, right? And then I share that with a lot of people within my community, and I get a bunch of likes or something. But with that, would Rolling Stones know that I shared that content with a bunch of people that I know? And then how does that get me engaged with Rolling Stones?
So what we would allow you to do is if you wanted to repost an article, or it would allow you to tag Rolling Stone. And then our corporate interface that we're in the process of building right now allows Rolling Stone to log in and say, who are the people who are talking about me and who are voluntarily allowing their data to be sold to me. And then Rolling Stone sets a spend, and they say, if I want to see the analytics of how your content performed on your feed, to your friends, then they can purchase that information from you. And then they can see a more clear picture of people who are verified, who posted content about you, who consistently post content about you, and who probably fit the metrics of what you're looking for in their target readership. And then they can filter by different locations, or they can filter by different activities, or they can filter by, how many different social media accounts are connected, which is by reputation. And being able to reward people who are doing the right thing for no reason is a good, and I keep using right thing, but people who are tagging the brands that they already like, they're shopping local, they're tagging their small businesses and telling all of their friends to go there. That's way more useful to a brand. That information is way more useful to a brand than anyone just, being an influencer being paid $10,000 to jump around in Walmart clothes.
Right. I don't want to see that.
No.
So we talked about reputation capital. Maybe it was a third or fourth episode when I started Future Design Podcast. And this is something that was a little bit obscure to understand, or a little bit vague, right? But I think that in the future, and in reputation capital, the concept itself has been talked about. I looked at previous TED Talks about it. Goes back almost 10 years. This is something that I think is going to be very valuable going forward. And especially in this world of, misinformation, fake news, and all this stuff, I think people who actually share real news, really interesting, valuable information, or influence towards brands, should be rewarded. Doesn't have to be monetarily. It could be with more reputation, or with advanced looks at new goods, or with new products, or with product experiences. There's lots of product experiences where it's you invite the top 10 Lexus customers to the Lexus dealership in your town to go see the new car coming out, or to go see, those kind of experiences should be awarded to people who have the right reputation and the right profile to be able to succeed. And then in terms of gaining this reputation capital, do you think it has to be monetary, or do you think there's another way to be rewarded with this?
I don't think so. I think monetary is the easiest one. It's the easiest. Sure. It's a currency is something that everybody understands. I think being able to reward people, you have to probably start with currency and then add on other things, where you could say, I'll either pay you $10 for this, or I'll pay you $10, or I'll pay you $20 worth of goods. And then you can choose whether you want the money, or whether you have to, it forces companies to make the reward mechanism worth more than the money that would actually get paid out. You can either have $10 cash, or you can have $20 of rewards, or $20 of products from, if you're Sephora, for example. You have, you could have a $10 gift card for Sephora, or a $10 Visa card, or you could have $20 worth of products for Sephora. And we've seen that work time and time again for sampling and for gift cards and stuff. But I think, figuring out how that reward mechanism works, it will have to be offset for a while before people will sort of feel that constraint about where they want to go next. Or about where they're going to put their consumer dollars.
Because, when I share something, I'm not looking to get rewarded monetarily by anybody, right? And I think the whole, and we work in the blockchain industry, so we've seen a lot of these business models work on incentivizing. How do you incentivize people to do certain things? But I think the honest, I wouldn't say incentive, the motive for what people do, trying to do good for the world or something, doesn't really come out of incentive, or monetary incentive, or I want to get something back because I do this, because then it just really dilutes the real reward that you really want to get out. Is people actually, it
does, but they still do it. And that from a social impact standpoint, you talk about how are we going to meet our climate change goals, our Paris Agreement? How are we going to meet the Paris Agreement goals? Well, governments put out subsidies. Governments put out the money to make it financially advantageous for you to do what the government determines is the right thing. And those kind of subsidies or programs, they work. And it might not be ideal, but if it makes people change something about their behavior, then they're going to do it, because it's we live in too apathetic of a world with too many flashing lights for people to choose the right path every single time. That we need to create a world that it is more difficult to do the wrong thing than it is to do the right thing. And that's like Bitcoin, for example. The reason the Bitcoin network hasn't been hacked is because it would be very, very expensive to do so. Like that's the only reason that Bitcoin is as secure as it is because it would cost you more money to hack it than you would get out of it. Plus then if if Bitcoin got hacked, the price of Bitcoin would plummet and then it would be worth nothing anyway. So that whole idea of like making it more financially advantageous to do what someone determines as the right thing is, I think it's not ideal, but obviously it's the only thing that people respond to.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit sad, but I guess that's the reality of the world.
Yeah. But those who were doing the right thing already, they get rewarded first, or they get rewarded in spades more because they're already used to, people who are already used to there not being enough electric car charging stations around. They, buy an electric car and they're already putting up with the fact that there aren't that many charging stations around, but then there get to be more charging stations and it makes it easier and easier to own an electric car. And that lets in more and more people.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, even recycling, when I used to live in the U.S. and back in the 80s, we will take all these bottles and put them to the supermarkets, and then we'll get like 5 cents in exchange for doing that. I mean, I thought that was an awesome, incentivization system for, people to actually do. And then it kind of grow into like people who actually don't own any income, but they just want to collect a bunch of bottles so they can earn an income, right? I mean, I thought that model was really awesome, and it does, it kills 2 birds with 1 stone. But I think that, nowadays, you don't have much of these things in place for us to really feel that we have to go and then put these things in a recycling bin or, doing something good for the world. And, maybe it comes to us.
They don't get the gratification. There's very little instant gratification for doing the right thing. And our world is built on instant gratification. So it's up to tech people to build systems that do incentivize and give instant gratification for doing the right thing.
And then in terms of your system that you're building as well, I mean, how does blockchain fit into that? And maybe you can.
So what we do is we publish all of this information to different social media platforms. We publish the who, what, when, and with whom. We publish all of that information to a blockchain that is specifically designed for metadata. It's called the Flow blockchain, FLO, and it's built on the Open Index protocol. So the Flow blockchain is down here, and the Open Index protocol makes it easier to publish to the Flow blockchain. The Open Index protocol is designed for metadata. It's currently being used by several different projects for different things. So we're using it for content and content provenance and reputation. The Medici Land Governance Project is using it for property records and land rights in the state of Wyoming. Caltech is using it to secure their microscope data from their electron microscope, which is pretty cool. And that's all to say is that what we do is we publish all of that information to a public environment. And then when a user wants to see it, we pull down that information and then we show it to them in a dashboard. And the whole point is that they don't have to trust us as a company. We're not creating another walled garden that people, we're deciding how things are ranked or deciding who gets to see what first or who gets to see what analytics. It's all run through the tool. It's a tool that enables people to publish and attest to the fact that they created things on social media. And then it stores a copy of the content in a decentralized fashion. So it stores it to SIA, which is a decentralized storage solution. And we store all copies of content there. And that one actually is purely a cost play. It costs us less to store it on SIA than it does to store it on AWS. And that's a perfect example of how decentralization is significantly cheaper. But then from a publishing perspective, we publish all of that information to the blockchain and we pull it down when we need it. And the key is that we get it the information directly from the APIs of each of these social media companies. So when I log in as a user, log in with Facebook, log in with Instagram, log in with Zoom, log in with Twitter, log in with YouTube, and then I publish to those platforms on their behalf and the analytics flow back into the tool. So the blockchain is crucial in the success of that because it creates what we believe is the beginning of immutable analytics. If I receive analytics from someone else, if I get a screenshot of traffic data, which is still how influencers communicate their content traffic, which is boggles my mind how that's still a thing. But if that data can come directly from the social media company, be attested to on a blockchain, then I know that the data that I'm getting and the data that I'm sharing is coming directly from the source. So it's first party. And then it is immutable because I'm pulling it down from the blockchain where it was stored or where it was secured as soon as it was published. And that creating that two-way street of verification that says, yes, I published this thing. And then the person on the other end says, yes, it was me. Yes, I would like to subscribe to these analytics. That two-way street makes it so that we're creating this reputation layer that is mutually agreed upon by all of the people who are involved in it.
And that's awesome. And then is your system already connected to all these social media accounts?
So we're in the process of working through the Facebook and Instagram API. We are connected right now to the Twitter API and to the YouTube API. And then Zoom is in progress as well. We just got feedback from them, and then we're working through that and submitting again.
Yeah.
So it's these social media companies do allow people to publish to each of these platforms, and we haven't run into a problem yet. Knock on wood. We haven't run into a problem yet.
Yeah, because I did sign up.
I think the biggest part is like we're not changing anything about the viewing experience. We don't change how people view content or interact with content. We're just changing the way they publish it.
And then, but is there a way that we can? Yeah, I guess we run into this problem always on the social media channels that if your content doesn't go viral, then nobody actually looks at it, right? And is that something that we can really change from our side or your side or anyway? Because it goes back into the whole. Sorry, I have to go back into these conversation about social media in general, but it does create this virality that shitty content also goes out there and it gets shared all the time, right? And maybe it's like really not that important for humanity, but still it just goes because it's fun, it's stupid, it's these memes and whatever. I mean, but is there a way to get it more safe? Because I'm trying to tie that in with the reputation, right? So like, is there a way that we can use more reputation rather than just funny content or virality?
Also, those are viral content is fun. Viral content is it's a crucial part of the internet. It shows it, and I would argue that funny things do bring people together, and virality does create lots of opportunities for brands to play in that space somehow. But I think I think making your content available, one thing that our tool does is when you publish, you can say, do I want anyone to be able to republish this or repost this? And then the tool does allow you to repost to different platforms if you want to. And enabling reposting or enabling, we have to that's why we have to store a copy of it. Originally, we didn't actually want to do that, but you have to store a copy to be able to recall it whenever you need it when somebody else wants to repost it. And I think just allowing people to be more thoughtful about the things that they share. If they're just a meme page, then they're going to keep sharing memes, and that's fine. But if they're getting them from somebody else, then they need a probably free, easy way to credit the person who originally created that thing and still have a piece of the pie for the fact that they've created a whole audience. So if I create a really funny meme and then it's picked up by a meme page, then that meme page should have the ability to somehow, not necessarily license isn't the right word, but find a way to repurpose that content on their page, which they're probably going to do anyway, but repurpose that content on their page and somehow attribute it to me. Or attribute not only say, this was Jenna's photo and then connect me, because that doesn't really help that much, but also be able to share the analytics of that photo with me and anyone else who helped me create that content in the first place. There's, you see TikTok dances, you see TikTok, all of these TikTok sounds that get created where it's like, this person created a sound and then they're not even in the top 100 videos of that sound anymore. And they were the first ones. So there is no way to rank that right now. And being able to say, one of the important parts about publishing to the blockchain is the blockchain gives you a timestamp that says this person published this thing at the first, like for the first time. And it may not be viral, but it gives you an attestation of who created what first. And if you find it somewhere else, then you know who to go after.
Yeah, I guess it's the whole provenance aspect of blockchain that brings this all together. I just wanted
Which isn't a necessarily sexy topic. People don't really want to secure their content before it goes viral. They want to once it's already famous, but yeah, it's not a particularly important concept at first when people are publishing content. They want to just put, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what turns to gold.
Yeah. So, you chose this social media content as your business, but, during the ICO times when, it wasn't just about Bitcoin or, Ethereum, there were so many business models that came out of it. And I'm sure you saw loads of them as well. Why do you think a lot of them never really, stuck around? Because, I work more in the enterprise, so I do more blockchains for, established businesses to replace existing systems. So it's a bit different. But in terms of these like startups, I mean, companies like yours, they came out through the 2018 ICO times. I don't know, you didn't do an ICO, but I think, they got so much money from all these ICOs and they just effed off, or they just business.
There are some, I would say there are some who effed off, but there are also some who took that money and are quietly building the previous, our previous wave of .com companies. Companies had to keep being loud about all of the things that they were doing so that they could keep bringing in more money. But now you have these projects like Bancor, like Polymath, like Tezos, like I'm sure there are lots of more, even like the Ethereum Foundation. A lot of those projects had to be very loud about, or haven't had to be very loud about the things that they're doing because they have all of the money that they need. They have all the resources that they need. They have a healthy community and they have many different channels that if you want to know what's going on, they'll be transparent about what's going on, but they're not going to actively release a press release every time something interesting happens. So yes, there were definitely a lot of people who took the money and effed off, but there were also a lot of people who took that money, took the opportunity, and were like, now, okay, we're going to take this money and build something cool. They did a lot of like yachts and Lambos as well, which is kind of annoying, but it's, it's distracting, but it's, what else would you do if you were a, 28-year-old kid who raised $60 million? Like, of course you're going to get a Swiss bank account and a yacht. Like, what else would you do?
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's people got a lot of money really quickly. And I think that was realistically for that much money, it would take, if you're smart about it, it would take a good company quite a long time to spend that kind of money. And we're seeing developments out of Polymath, out of Bancor, out of Tezos, out of the Ethereum Foundation. Ethereum 2 is coming out soon. Like there's all kinds of different, Tendermint, the Cosmos project, like all of those different protocols are actively building, but building decentralized systems is hard. They're trying to break down 200 years of financial infrastructure. And like, if they don't have it figured out in 2 years, like that's okay. If they might not have it figured out in 10, and that's fine. But I think there are still groups of people who have their incentives correct. And the biggest thing will be usability. It will be UI UX that will work for normal people, that allows normal people to interact with whatever they build. And that's been the biggest thing right now, is that like a lot of these protocol or infrastructure projects, it takes so long to explain to people what you're actually trying to do and why that thing is needed, that and they haven't had to tell that story a lot of times because they had one ICO and now they have enough money. Whereas some founders founders who've raised a seed, series A, B, C, D, you've spent a lot of time telling your company story and you got your story pretty straight. But these guys don't have to tell their company story this whole time. They get to just sit on their piles of money until they're not piles of money anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I guess, hypes kind of move from one to another. I mean, that's why you probably don't hear about blockchain so much these days. And now it's kind of moved on to AI again after multiple iterations of AI. And then you have like...
But now we're coming back. now we're coming
IoT
back.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Price
Hopefully.
of Bitcoin is going back up, and the big thing this summer was DeFi. For all of the same people who invested in ICOs are now investing in DeFi and in different lending products and in, you know, all of the derivative financial products that you should not get into if you don't understand them.
There's always a, you know, coming from traditional finance, that's the thing that really boggled me a lot, is like, how do you actually get an yield from something that you don't actually get any yield from? And then you're paying people with your own created token that supposedly has value. I don't know.
Yeah. And then you could take those tokens, you could fork the chain, you could replicate all of those tokens and call them something else.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have Uniswap, and then you have Sushi Swap, and then you have kimchi, and then you have all of these other things that you could just add into there, and it gets very batty very quickly.
Yeah. Sometimes I was joking with my friend, if I didn't have the conscience back in ICO, I should have done an ICO, and if I didn't have the conscience now, I should have done DeFi and created my own hummus chain or whatever it is that I can think of.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you could do if you didn't have a conscience, but you know, those products, they'll weed themselves out. They'll run their course, and then they'll be done. Yeah. And then we can all get back to work.
Yeah, like you're doing right now. And I really, really kind of value people who are actually doing stuff in this industry that's not really out there to just do an ICO or disappear, or, you know, just create your own token and do whatever you want. And, you know, I think that we need more and more people like you to be more vocal as well. I mean, obviously, you know, some people might have already had, you know, some success of raising capital, but it's not just about the capital that you need to tell a story, right? Because, you know, I think blockchain is something that you need to create like a consortium of companies or a network of people. And if you don't go out there and talk about it, you know, just be the salesperson that you have to be and talk about it, whether you're not trying to raise capital or not. But, you know, you going on to this podcast is definitely one of these things that, you know, helps create this industry to be more positive. It's not about scams and stuff like that, because, you know, the whole industry has been tainted with that. So I think we need more people that can bring more light, more positivity to this industry. So, you know, thank you very much for sharing your stories, and I had a wonderful time talking to you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm really excited to catch up when we're all rich. when the world continues to be a better place.
Yeah, or, you know, just hit me up when you're in Singapore.
Sounds good. Will do.
All right. Thanks a lot. Hi, this is your host Takatoshi Shibayama. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Now, if you enjoyed or disliked the show, please let me know by writing in the comment section. The only way I can improve or add value to you is through your voices. If there are any topics that you would like me to pick up, please also let me know in the comments. I'd love to start chatting with you all. And if you would like to continue watching the show, please subscribe. Thank you.